Give me a thumbs up, Ginger. Can you hear me? Are we hearing me? Yes? No?
Yep, can hear you perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Well, hey, it's great to have you as we get going today in our What the CEO Needs You to Know earnings call lab. Looking forward to spending some time with you. As it said, I'm Brent, going to spend most of the time today with you as we go through this program. Thank you for joining us. As we get started today, there's a couple tools that we're going to be using. I want to make sure that you're comfortable using. The first is a polling. So I've got a couple polling questions to get us started. You should see on your screen a poll question. The question is, are you a graduate of one of our Acumen Learning Building Business Acumen programs? Go ahead and answer that. Now, of course, as you go to answer, make sure that you hit submit. If you don't submit it, it won't actually calculate that. But you may have attended something this year. Yes, attended something last year or other periods of time. But and it's fine if you haven't, by the way. If you haven't, welcome. Good to meet you. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you today. But just a quick comfortability around the polling. The reason I like to ask this question, because those that have been part of our program, I'm going to have you help us as we go through this. Now, if you're used to doing a webinar where you just kind of sit back and kind of multitask, put yourself on mute, that is not this webinar. In the next 45, 50 minutes or so as we walk through this, I want you to be fully engaged. I'm going to invite you to engage around both the polling questions as well as the chat box. So as we wrap that up, let me just kind of share the results and we'll see how we did there on our results here. As you look at participation, hopefully you should be able to see this here. Let me just condense my document so I can see it as well. As we look at that, it looks like, boy, many of you have attended, so welcome back. There's a good portion, about 40%, who have not, so no worries. Good to have you here, and whether you've been here or you been with us before or you have not, no worries. We're going to walk you through the material. Let me just ask you, how many of you have actually participated in one of these webinars, or what the CEO needs you to know earnings call labs? Last month, for example, we did Zoom. I think that before that we did Walmart. Boy, we've done a number of companies, ExxonMobil, Tesla, etc. If you've ever participated in one of these webinars, just kind of answer. And again, no, if you haven't, no worries. That's why you're here today, and we're glad to have you as we get going. This program happens every month where we get a chance to focus on how to listen to an earnings call. We do different industries, different companies. It's a great thing to continue to build your business and financial acumen by engaging around this experience. As we get going today, it looks like most of you have answered. Again, make sure you hit submit. For those that haven't joined us on these polling questions, please join us. That's how it's going to make the experience much more engaging as we get going. But we hold these every month where we get a chance to kind of review them. Now, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to introduce you to a basic framework, a process, and a tool that will help you as you look to listen and experience these earnings calls. So that's our goal as we get going through today. So it doesn't matter whether you've been through our program or not. I'm going to give you enough that you can go ahead and execute around that. As you look at the group, it looks like more than half of you have been a part of this. So thank you. Grateful and excited to come back. My next question for those that come back, have you read GM's call? Have you used the tool to prepare for this? I hope you have, and I'd love some insights as we get going today. Well, that's enough about the polling tool. Looks like we're comfortable with that. Before we jump into the program, my second tool is the chat box. So make sure you open the chat box, and we'll make sure everybody has it set to to everyone. Make sure it's set to everyone so you're able to answer. When you respond, everybody will see it. So here's what I want you to do in the chat box. Make sure you're comfortable, and here's what I want you to say. Where are you calling in from? It could be a city, could be a state, could be a country. My wife is from Canada, maybe a province. I say Providence, it's province. A location in your home, as some of you may be working from home. Where are you calling in from? I'm calling in from the great state of Utah, just south of Salt Lake City, Utah, where our headquarters. We were founded by Kevin Cope and Stephen M.R. Covey, who are executives at Franklin Covey, a great leadership organization. And we've been in business here for about 19 years, focused purely on that topic of business and financial acumen. Excellent. Looks like we've got a great group here with us today as we get going. So those are the tools. That's what we're going to do. Here, let's jump into it. I've got a lot to cover in the time we're trying to cover, so let me make sure this is available. You should be seeing my screen as we get going here. Make sure if you've lost your chat box, open that chat box. Make sure that's ready to go as we get going. So let's jump in. As we jump into this workshop, I've got another polling questions. I know I'm bombarding you with polling questions, but here's my question. You're coming to an earnings call where we talk about how to listen to, or you're coming to a program where we're talk about how to listen to an earnings call. So here's my question. When is the last time, let me open my box so I can see it, make sure I got the, when's the last time you listened to an earnings call? Go ahead and answer that. It could be your company's earnings call, could be a customer. If you're in a sales, boy, it's a great way. If you're listening to your customer's earnings call, what you're going to find, you're going to know more about their company than many of the people you're selling into. Maybe you're just interested in listening to calls from an investment perspective, more like a Warren Buffett. You're trying to really understand the fundamentals of the business, so you're investing not just on the technical measures of volumes, PE ratios, et cetera, but really the financial strength of the business, et cetera. Or it could be the company that you're working with or a benchmark company. So when's the last time you listened to an earnings call? Hey, I listened to it this year. Looks like a lot of you are saying that. Last year, et cetera. Let me go ahead and close the polling there. Looks like most of you voting. Again, make sure you hit submit on all these polls so we get them tracking there. But here we go. Here's the results. It looks like majority of you have had a chance to listen to a call. 21% of you have never. That is awesome. I'm excited for those that have never been through this call to get some tools that will help you to do it. For those that have been through them, you got some basic understanding. My hope is with this framework, the process and the tools, you'll be able to get even better at this and be able to apply it. Well, interesting enough, these earnings calls, publicly traded companies are not required to do an earnings call, but they always, many of them, most of them, take that opportunity to communicate to the market the business performance of the company. What's interesting is these happen every single quarter, and in my opinion, at times it's a hidden gem for many people. Even those that go to them, the ability to kind of capture what they're talking about can be kind of difficult. In fact, let me share a couple statistics around that. How much information do you think employees truly understand around their corporate strategy? Well, here's a stat that you may or may not be familiar with. 95% of employees don't understand their company's strategy. Think about that, 95%. Can that really be true? Now, this comes from Harvard, so I don't know, depending on maybe you're a Stanford person or whatever, in the end, this is a statistic that came from a review that they did. 95% of employees don't understand their company's strategy. Look at this statistic. 90% of employees don't understand these key business metrics. The ability to kind of keep score. Are we improving? Are we not? This, on these calls, you're learning stuff about EBIT, for example, EBITDA, return on capital employed, free cash flow, all these metrics and measures that for some, I've heard them before, but in some cases, it's just like going right over my head, right? Now, imagine you're the CEO of the company, like General Motors, Mrs. Mary Barra, who's the CEO. Great CEO, love listening to her call, love her emphasis on the team and what she's focused on. You got 110 plus year organization. This was founded in 1908. 155,000 employees globally, leading a transformation strategy, really driving towards social, environmental benefits of mobility. In fact, one of their big goals they talk about is 30 new electric vehicles by 2025. At the time of their announcement, they only had one. This strategy is huge. In fact, they've got videos that talk about, I got a video I want to share, is they pitch, this is the message, their CEO's pitching to the world about where GM's going. As you watch this, I want you to think about, what is it that the CEO needs their employees? What is it they need their customers? What is it they need their shareholders to know about the future of GM? Let's watch that quick video here. Technology is always awesome when it works. When it doesn't, it's kind of tough there. Let me see what's going on. We tested it before. It seemed to be working here. Let's see real quick on the. Can't hear it, Bob. I apologize there. Well, we may have to punt on this. We tested it earlier. It seemed to be working. I'm on a new computer. Maybe I got a setting I'm missing here. Well, the whole idea is this, they're calling this E-generation. That's the quote. This E-generation, and as it plays, I'll kind of, it talks about their Ultium battery. This is a battery that's going to give 400 to 450 miles of transportation capabilities. It's a revolutionary opportunity for them, and they're going to play a major part in it. So she's communicating to the market the importance of this new generation. I'm going to kind of fast forward it to get to the very end. I apologize, it's not working here. Everybody's in on this EV opportunity. The electric vehicle future starts now is the message that they're communicating. Folks, this is a game changer. This is significant change that they're focused on. So as you think about, put the CEO hat on, Ms. Barra's having to communicate to this market, this whole transformation of the industry. So what do you need the employees to know at General Motors? What is it that she wants her customers to know? What about those shareholders that own stock in General Motors, as well as all the partners, suppliers that they're working for? Well, that's what these earnings calls are about. It's an opportunity where executives get a chance to communicate to the market their strategic focus, their vision and innovation, the opportunity to grow and expand their business, to report to the market how well they are performing, where they want to go, and why the market wants to be a part of this great transformation that they're a part of. As I said earlier, the challenge is that 95% of employees, even if they do go, it's hard for them to capture what's going on in the business. That's where we come in. Our goal is to help you with simple tools and resources to be able to capture what's going on in the business, why it's important, but most importantly, what can you within your role do to impact it? In the end, here's my guarantee. I'm going to give you a simple framework. I'm going to give you a process, and I'm going to give you a tool. As we go through these three things, here's my guarantee. If you take this tool and use it on the next 2 or 3 consecutive earnings call for your company, if you want to do this on your company, if you're in a sales role, you want to look at one of your biggest customers, do it on the customer. If you're just interested in getting better individually, pick any company you want to look at. But my guarantee is this. As you do it, it truly will build your credibility as a business leader. It'll build your career and it'll build your company. Here's what we find at Acumen Learning, working with many of the Fortune 500, in fact, working with 30 of the Fortune 50 companies, is that what we find is senior leaders are doing everything they can to squeeze a dollar of the financial statement. But as you think about it from a business perspective, who really impacts the business? It's you, it's your colleagues, it's your peers, it's your customers. In the end, what we find is employees are functionally brilliant. You're very good at what you do, but we often kind of go through business like this. I'm focused on my individual functional role. I'm rarely stepping back and getting the big picture perspective. That's what this allows you to do. As you think about Ms. Barra, she didn't start as the CEO. At some portion, she came in as a certain function, and over time, she began to look beyond her function and saw opportunity on how her function can help drive company results. So that's my guarantee. As you use this tool, it'll build your credibility, it'll build your career, and it can build your company as well. So with that in mind, let's jump into the process. There's a 3-step process I want to cover. First is to prepare, second is to analyze, and then to apply. So let's jump to the prepare portion of this. As we jump into the preparation, again, you're going to get this tool at the end. If you stick with this here, there's 2 parts to an earnings call, just a high-level earnings call 101. For those 21% have never been to their call, this is a chance where executives communicate to the market. There's executives and there's analysts on the call. Now, you can listen, but you can't communicate in most cases. In fact, one of the companies, there's only one that I'm familiar with that actually opens it up to the general population. And that's Tesla. They allow you to invite questions or provide questions earlier. But in the end, there's 2 parts to it. There's a prepared remarks where the executives communicate to their market what's going on in their business, their strategy, their current performance, and where they want to go. Now, there's a bit of a marketing piece in there, but they have the analysts there who are going to kind of test them and check them. In fact, the analysts then follow it up with Q&A, where they get a chance to ask the questions around what was communicated. And what you'll find is in some cases, they can be a little aggressive about, hey, you're saying this, but I'm not seeing that in the numbers. In fact, in this call with General Motors, the one quote I brought out from one of the analysts, that's exactly what he's doing. He's questioning what's the optimal amount of inventory and if what you're saying is really correct as far as their performance. So that's the basics of the earnings call. So you jump in the preparation, there's 3 steps you do. You got to locate the call, you got to review your notes, and you got to meet with the team. So let me talk through the location of the call. I'm going to quickly do a jump over to how do you access this information. There's this great website. You may be familiar. It's called Google. Pretty simple to access this. Now, you can go to their website, find their investor relation, and do a number of clicks. But in the end, it's quite easy. Just type in General Motors, and I want Q1 specific earnings call. If I could type and talk at the same time, there you go. comes up. Now, what you're going to find, there's all sorts of information. Now, you'll notice this first one, this is full or motley full. There's a number of third-party organizations that will track information and provide a bunch of that data for their investors. I tend to want to go right to the heart of it, so I'm looking for the company's investor. So you'll notice right here, investorgm.com. I click on that, and I'm there. I'm right here, Q1. Right here's the earnings call. Here's the letter from the CEO. Sometimes I'll have a press release where it's a little overview of what happened. Great little resource there. There's the consolidated financial data. So here's the financial information that they want to give out. In addition to that, some clients do earnings call slide decks. Now, for me, I love the decks because it can give you a nice summary of what they're talking about. Then you can do a deeper dive by jumping in. So that's how you get access. The other thing that you may want to get access that GM doesn't provide on their website is a transcript. To access a transcript, do the same thing. Jump to Google, do GM earnings call 2021 Q1 transcript, and you'll get access to a transcript. Now, prior to the call, you won't get access to it. All you're going to have is this link, and when you click on it, if it's a brand new, they ask you to register. So you go in, you put your name in, and you get registered for it. If it's already happened, you'll be able to access the recording. They usually keep the recording up for multiple periods. Sometimes there's a deadline within the next 90 days, etc., but that's how you access the information. So that's the first. Locate the call or the transcript, because if it's prior, you're just registering for the call. Once the call's happened, you can find the recording or the transcript. Then look at the press release, the financial performance, as well as a deck if they have it. The next step is to review your notes from past calls. Now, you might say to me, Brent, what notes are you talking about? I don't have any notes. Well, in the end, as you go through and do this tool multiple times, that becomes the notes you come back to. That being said, even if you haven't done it, do that same search. If I wanted to see what happened in Q4 for GM, I do that same search, General Motors Q4 earnings call, and it's going to bring up that same information. I could do a review if I want to. The goal, though, is you do this consecutively, you walk through this tool, and you have that as your notes that you can review. It's a great way. You see what they said they're going to do, and then 3 months later, did they really do it? What's going on? By the way, if you're in sales, we do a lot of sales organizations. It's a great resource to look at your customers. When you start to be able to articulate their business challenge for them, they'll start to say stuff like, how do you know this? How are you so familiar with our numbers? I wish I could say it's because I'm brilliant, because I have a PhD, or because I got an MBA. In the end, I can read. It's all there. And so as you understand what's going on with their business, all of a sudden, then you can explain how your solution can help match that. If you're internal as an employee, being able to connect your role to what's driving the business, it creates opportunities for you. It's tremendous. So obviously, I'm biased here, but excited about it. So review your past notes. The last thing is a potential recommendation I would give is to go ahead and meet with your team. What do I mean by that? These are great to do on your own. You can do the tool by yourself, but to do it with somebody else, it brings in a greater, much more rich experience. So if you're a team lead, bring your team together. Listen to the call and walk through this tool. If it's a situation it's going to be hard to take them offline for 1 hour and a quarter, then maybe you review it, and in a team meeting, you kind of walk them through it. But going through this together with somebody else really increases the richness of your learning for sure. So that's step one, preparation. Pretty simple. Access it, review your notes, and get with your team as you prepare for that. Now, the analyze phase is where the meat of this tool is. I'm going to give you 2 tools that will get there, but before I do it, I want to introduce you to a model. It's called the 5-driver business model. Now, let's get that chat box open. I need all those who are there are 60+% of you who've been through our program. So in the chat box, let's help fill this out for those that haven't seen it before. This is just a simple framework that you can use as you think about your business, talk about your business, or execute around your business. So let's talk about them. The first is the cash driver. Now, you all know what cash is. From the course, or just a famous phrase around cash, is this: cash is blank. Fill in the blank for me. What would you say? Cash is blank. What would you say? There you go. Cash is king, queen. If you're Ram Shriram, you'll say it's the oxygen supply of a company. Cash is vitally important. And as you look at COVID-19, the impacts on cash, some companies, like for those of you who were with our program a few months ago, we looked at Amazon. Cash is coming in droves. They're growing like crazy versus those of you that were with us at Boeing, where cash is being depleted as they had 450 737 MAX sitting. They couldn't deliver them during COVID time periods. In the end, cash is vitally important. You look at the key metrics we talk about. One is called cash and cash equivalent, sometimes referred to as the cash cash on hand. And that kind of is like a savings account, a place where executives have cash for future investment, rainy day funds, etc. The second key metric that often we talk about is what's called cash flow, or cash flow from operations. This represents the difference between all the cash that comes in from your core business minus all the cash that goes out to run the business. This is the cash that's left over that a company can then reinvest into their business through capital expenditures or acquire in other businesses. It's a place where they can take that cash and get it back to investors by way of dividends or stock buybacks, or hold on to it for future investment. Now, this is a key lever that we all impact, yet day in and day out, we often don't talk about it. My guess is many of you did not wake up this morning and say, man, I hope I generate more cash today. You may have said, I want to generate more sales, I want to get more profitability, I want to get more volumes, more production, etc. But in the end, cash becomes a big issue if you're running out. So cash is king, vitally important. It's a key factor. So as you're listening to these calls, what are they saying about cash? How are they from a cash position? Those are all good things to kind of track. Of course, the next lever we talk about is profitability, and there was two levers we talk about in the program that impact profitability. If you increase something or decrease something, it'll create greater profitability. Do you remember what those levers were? You don't have to be in the class. Just think about it. If I want to grow profitability in my business, what are my levers? Put them in the chat box. You increase something or decrease something. Sales up, there you go. Increased revenue, decreased cost, sales, absolutely. Increase in revenue or sales, also known as top line, those are all the same term. Two ways you do that: greater pricing on your product or service, and or greater volume, sell more. This is where product mix comes into play, all the different factors about what we're selling, how unique our product is, etc. But that will impact that revenue or sales. The other side is cost management. Those are the levers that have a significant, by the way, those also impact cash. In fact, I call that business 101. If you want to remember the two fundamentals that impact all these drivers, it's increasing your revenue or reducing your expenses. Absolutely has a huge impact. Chris, when we talk about assets, of course, a company like General Motors has a tremendous amount of assets. You think about their manufacturing facilities. They're producing a new zero carbon manufacturing plant that's huge. It's going to be a big part of their EV engine, but that's a lot of investment in their assets, a lot of inventory. Think about all the dealerships and all the vehicles that are sitting out there that's part of their inventory. Assets represents anything a company owns or controls which has value. There's two key aspects we often talk about around assets that are quite important, what they call asset strength and asset utilization. When you think about these, think of these as kind of on two sides of a teeter-totter. Asset strength is all about the financial strength of a business. How much cash do they have on hand? How much liability do they have in relationship to their debt? In the end, a company that's at high risk is when they have a low equity position in relationship to their debt within the organization. And so what's the right amount? If you want to increase your asset strength, you're going to hold on to cash, you're going to pay down your debt. The challenge is if I'm just holding on to my cash, I'm not getting much of a return. So the other side of the coin is asset utilization, how you deploy that asset, where you make investments, how you're making those investments. So you see kind of this balancing between the two. Executives are very focused on make sure I get great utilization of my assets, great deployment, a lot of volume, a lot of production, but also have a strong balance sheet that allows them to do future investments, etc. So the foundation of those first three, again, are the three statements: the statement of income, the statements of cash flow, the statement of income, as well as the balance sheet. Those are the three statements. Now, growth is what investors and analysts expect and are driving towards, right? That's what they want to see. Of course, people, what makes it happen? When we talk people, we're talking about both internal and external customers. Now, of course, companies like GM are very focused on their external customers, providing products or services that they absolutely want. But it's not just externally. How well do we get internally from an execution perspective? Well, folks, that's a brief review of this 5-driver model. As you look at this, this becomes a simple framework as you think about business. As you think about what's going on in business, what are they talking about? Is it cash, profit, asset growth, or people? If you use this framework from a decision-making perspective, how does my decision or this opportunity I want to execute around, how does it impact cash? How does it impact profit, assets, growth, or people? That is the 5-driver model. So with that introduction, let me jump into the tools. There's two tools that both use the 5-driver model. The first is called the Executive Alignment Activity or Tool. Here's how it works. With any executive communication, what you're going to do is you're listening to the call or you're reading it. Every time they say something about cash, you put a little slash mark. Every time you say something about profit, you put a little slash mark. Now, don't worry. If you've never taken a program, finance and accounting is a little newer to you, or it's been a long time since you've been through those classes, we give you some explanations in the tool. For example, right there, if you can't remember what you should be thinking about around cash, we give a little definition of cash right there. Not only that, when you're searching for what are they talking about, we give examples, what I call trigger words. If I hear anything about sources of use of cash, I'm putting a slash mark. Some of those examples, paying dividends or distributions, buying back shares of stock, accessing debt, those are all sources and uses of cash. So I'm listening for those as they talk about. Every time I hear one, I put a slash. Now, once you've gone through that whole call, you can imagine you're going to have all sorts of slashes. You're going to add them together, and your next step is right here. You're going to answer these 4 questions. The 4 questions are these. Which business driver seems to get the most attention? I love the second part of it, and why? Think about the context of the communication. For example, on an earnings call, it's going to be very focused to analysts, investors, etc. Whereas if you're an employee of GM, they may do a internal town hall meeting where you may have a little different focus based upon who they're talking about. Think about what's going on in their industry. For example, COVID-19 impacting global supply chains. That's why they're talking about assets and growth within their company. What's going on in the markets? What's going on with their customers? What innovations are coming out? Think about that in the context of these 5 drivers. The next question is, what are the 2 or 3 key messages they're trying to communicate? Question 3, what are the goals and objectives, trends going forward? And then finally, because it's an earnings call, what are some of the analyst questions that they're asking? Why are they asking that? To kind of get their perspective. So that's the tool. Pretty simple. If you're reading it, you could probably do it faster. These calls are typically somewhere between about 40 minutes to an hour and a half. Most common, they're around 50 minutes to an hour is what you're looking at. Once you're done, you have a good assessment of what's going on in their business from a strategic performance. So that's what I want to do. What I've got here is I've got 3 or 4 quotes. I'm going to go through, get your chat box open, and here's what I want you to do. Using my 5-driver model, what I want you to tell me is which of these drivers they focused on. This first one, I'll go line by line. We'll do together, and the next 2, I'll just let you do on your own, okay? So get your chat box up. Let's start with the first line. Here we go. First line here is, I'm very pleased with the strength of our global business, which contributed to EBIT, by the way, extra credit in the chat box if you know what EBIT stands for, adjusted for of $4.4 billion, and an EPS diluted adjusted for $2.25. So, which drivers are we talking about? If you're not familiar, it looks like Jazz Mike got the earnings before interest tax. That's a little cheating there. Ron there, look at that. Earnings before interest taxes. Absolutely. Earnings before interest and tax is the measure. You'll hear it. Another one, if you have heard, this is newer to you, you might jot down, it's called EBITDA. Earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. Very basic way. It's a key profitability metric. It's a metric that investors are interested in because it communicates the profitability of their core business. Sometimes referred to as kind of their controllable profit. So this is absolutely a profit one, and how much was being contributed. Let's jump to the next line. Next sentence here. What are they talking about? Which of my drivers? The strong quarter was a full team effort with people. Hint: if they actually say the driver, it's probably going to be part of that one for sure. Working in our plants and all the way to our dealers. Which driver? There you go. Absolutely. People is, and boy, if you listen to Miss Barra's communication, there's a lot that she talks about from the team and their customers. I love her communication around that. My IO psychology comes out there. The last sentence is this: global purchasing and supply chain, engineering and manufacturing have been especially nimble and opportunistic as we manage through this semiconductor shortage. Excuse me. I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but they've had a huge issue around getting access to semiconductors. By the way, it's not just them. I was listening to Ford's, same thing. Many of these automobiles, and I'll talk about what caused that. But what's in there? So a lot of assets is what I'm hearing. Absolutely assets. You talk about different segments of the business. You could maybe weave in a little people there. But this idea of of course, semiconductors, that's inventory to produce their products. So absolutely it's going to be assets. So it's pretty simple there. Now, one of the things that I'll share, this is not an exact science, meaning if you and I were to do this together, we may not get the exact same numbers of times they talked about assets or cash or profit or whatever it might be. That being said, we do over 1,000 of these sessions every year where we do this type of activity with our customers. And invariably, the top 2 or 3 drivers will go to the top. We may not have the exact same number, but the top 2 will truly stand out. So let's do two more. I'm not going to read them. You just kind of walk through them. Put in the chat box. What are you seeing? Now, this one's from their CFO, Paul Jacobson, very new as the CFO, came from Delta Airlines and joined them December 1st of this last year. So it's basically his first quarter in their fiscal year 2021 he's been a part. So kind of review it. Which drivers seem to stand out? I'll be quiet. Let's put them in the chat box. Please, if you haven't jotted anything down, now's the time. Open up your chat box. There's no right or wrong answer. Just kind of put what you're seeing in there. What stands out to you? Okay, we're getting a lot about growth. We're talking about accelerating, this acceleration idea. I think one of you even marked that, right? That potentially drives growth. Assets, absolutely. They're talking about all the new trucks or no vehicles that are coming out, EVs that they're announcing, which are huge. Assets around their buildings, their facilities, absolutely you'd have assets there. Cash right there, investing $9 to $8 billion that they're talking about from an investment perspective. Some of you are talking profitability right here, earnings. Anytime when you hear profit, earnings, and income are synonymous in business. If you don't know that, jot that down somewhere. It'll help you a lot. So when they say earnings before interest and tax, they could say profit before interest and tax on that key metric we're looking at earlier. So earnings, income, or profit, the same thing. So absolutely you're going to see that. You come down here, again, some of the vehicles, assets, etc. You guys are doing great. You can see it's CapEx. It's the question, what is CapEx? Interesting, CapEx could be multiple. One is it takes cash to build out capital expenditure. So absolutely you're going to see it there. But in the end, what is capital expenditures going toward? It's building more assets. Absolutely. So you can see both. You can see it and you put two lines down for what you saw. In the end, it's not an exact science. Like I said, over 1,000 sessions a year, invariably the top 2 or 3 will jump to the top. You'll see it. Okay, not only do the executives communicate, but the analysts. This is the one I was telling you about. Mr. John Murphy's an analyst for Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Look at this question. I'm going to go ahead and read this, but you kind of just jot down your answer because I think it's interesting from the perspective of challenging the executives. Would you argue that that record profits indicates that you're in optimal inventory? Now, one of the things I love to listen to them because I hear the tone of their voice. And he's trying to be nice, but he's also kind of giving a little jab. He says, I mean, for a few decades now, the inventory has been out of whack and too high. And now suddenly it's supposedly too tight because there's a lot of communication about inventory. We're seeing record profits now. I mean, is it really too high? And what do you mean by going back to something more normal? I mean, now I'm exaggerating it, by the way. If Mr. Murphy's on the phone, I apologize. But he's really trying to get for his investors what's real and what isn't. I look at least the last 3 quarters. The inventory was 492,000 in the third quarter of last year, and now you're at 335. You just put up the best record stretch I think GM has had in the history with this inventory. That's not optimal or too tight. It just seems like you shouldn't change that much. What do you mean by growing your inventory? Trying to get real clarity around it. Really, what's the optimal around it? They knew from the past they'd have too much inventory on the lots. But now there's shortage. What's the right optimal? And he's saying you're generating great revenue. Shouldn't this be optimal? Excellent question. So what does inventory mean to Bank of America? Well, so he's talking on the context of General Motors. So he's an analyst questioning them. He's going to then write a report saying, hey, do they have the optimal inventory? Should they increase their inventory or should they not? Mr. Murphy will analyze and make that communication. So he's speaking on behalf of Bank of America, Fort Merrill Lynch, their investors. Now, from an investment perspective for a bank, that gets a little complicated because actually the cash that comes into their business, they use that to invest in projects, et cetera. So inventory is a little different as you think about banking. Maybe we'll do a bank on one of these. That'll be a fun one. Well, folks, we don't have time to go through the whole thing and have you read every single quote there. I've done it for you here. So let me just kind of share. I went through the whole call, and here's my responses. Here's what I saw doing the slash marks. Now, one of the things I like to do, you don't have to do this. I like to put the prepared remarks in one color and the analyst's questions or comments, and as well as their responses in another color. The reason I do that, it helps me see what they're communicating versus what the analysts communicate interested in. Is it in an alignment? You'll see, for example, that on assets, they're both the top, whether it's the analyst questions or what they communicate. They're the number one thing they talked about. You're seeing as well, growth very high as well. People a little higher for the analysts. And really it's customers, it's suppliers, as they think it's not just internal employees that they're talking about. But in the end, pretty simple there. I've calculated them together. Obviously, right here's number one. Here's number 2, but you got a lot of play on these two. Now you look at the top one, you might say, well, Brent, you just told me cash is king. Why is there only 9 situations? As I said, if we're in a strong cash position, you don't hear a lot about it. It's when it becomes problems, when market changes, et cetera, that you start to hear. Now, if they took out a big debt to invest in some of these projects, you'd hear a little more. But at least in this segment, it was a lot more about assets and growth. So now we jump to the second part of the tool, which is answering the questions. Now, I assume you can read that. No, there's no way you can read it. I can't read it. I'm looking right in front of it. So I've got it summarized here. But here's those 4 questions, but let me go through them. So here's question number 1. Which business drivers seem to get the most attention and why? What did I see? You just saw my notes. It's assets and growth. Why? Well, one of their key taglines is generate profitable growth as we execute our vision of 0 crashes, 0 emissions, and 0 congestion. Have you thought of that? I knew that there was an emphasis around, social and environmental responsibility, but I didn't realize how big of a push. This is their key vision or goal for their company. 0 crash, I get that. That makes sense to me. But 0 emissions and 0 congestion, it really makes sense while they're targeting 30 new EV plays by 2025. Huge emphasis there. So as you look at that, one of the tools I love, I told you earlier, was their slide deck. So let me jump to what they kind of said in their slide deck. Some great little information here. This is where they speak to that goal, and they give a laundry list of what are some potential opportunities that they're seeing coming down the pipe. 30 new EVs is just electric vehicle by 2025. Guys, it's not just their industry that are getting impact. I just did a call recently with an oil and gas company where they talk about, more environmentally friendly. They're talking about drilling equipment where it can be run all electric drilling equipment. Well, they're not quite there, but that's the future, right? Technology and innovation becomes a part of that. So they kind of communicate it in their slides, what they're trying to do. So assets and growth, why are they focused on it? Because they have a big transformation. They're moving towards this transition of GM for the future with EV, electric vehicle, AV, automotive vehicles. So what are some of the examples? New products. A lot was talked about new products. Again, I love the slide deck. I love it in the automotive because you get these great videos, you get these great pictures. Here's what they have. They've already announced the GMC Hummer EV pickup for fall of 2021. They've got the Cadillac Lyriq, man, I'm going to butcher that. I'm from Idaho, so sorry about that. But Cadillac's probably not my play. I'm probably down here in the truck, the Silverado example. But look at that. Second half of 2022, when that's coming out, they announced a new SUV. And this one of their top selling vehicles is their pickup truck, as well as their SUVs. And so they have announced Chevrolet Silverado will be one of their key, what they call large market opportunities. These others, Hummers and Cadillac, those are kind of niche spaces. But the Silverado pickup truck is huge, and it's going to be a mass resource and available to everyone. So kind of an interesting communication. You talk about why are they talking about assets and growth? It's all these products that are coming out. Some additional things. They talk about this thing called Bright Drop, commercial delivery business. By raise of hand, anybody heard of this? Anybody from FedEx on the call with us today? They're actually producing, it's called EV600. It's an autonomous delivery vehicle. They're looking to deliver some of these to FedEx by end of year. FedEx Express is what they talked about. Huge. I mean, you think about this. This is not that far away, guys. The technology communication around assets, their Ultium battery. Sorry, that video. Maybe in our response, I'll put the link to the video. Can you see? Super Cruise is their hands-free transportation technology that allows people to drive hands-free. Of course, their platform, it's called Vehicle Intelligent Program. This, I think of it kind of like an app store. This is how it communicates to download the latest and greatest. They got backup, trailering and parking apps that they provide, as well as updating their technology there. And then, of course, the importance of infrastructures. You think of this transition for General Motors, I got to be part of that infrastructure. We're really building a solution that can go global is what they're focused on. So, of course, they talked all about the Ultium battery and where they're producing, how much gigawatts they're able to produce. Bright Drop, the partnership with FedEx. They talked about in Dubai or Abu Dhabi. I can't remember. That's Dubai right there. They're looking at these autonomous taxis, 4,000 of them, a part of their partnership with Cruise, which is an autonomous vehicle software company. Anyways, these vehicles are going to be out. And of course, the big emphasis on their charging investments that they're doing. Guys, so why are they talking about growth and assets? It has to do with this transformation they're doing. This Super Cruise hands-free, they talked about how people love it. They did this commercial where they have, these are celebrities, and all of a sudden it takes over, it moves lanes for them. And look at the joy and excitement and convenience, thrilling and surprising the drivers. Now, just to be clear, they're not going to try and surprise you when you get, but the fact that it really does what it does is pretty incredible. In the end, why is it growing? It's because of all the products they're doing, the new technology all around this EV. In fact, they talked about a partnership with Honda, 2 Ultium-based EV vehicles that they're partnering with them to produce. This is an industry that's transforming. Why are they talking about assets and growth? Because their expectation to be the cutting edge. They're going to lead this opportunity. So we've got that portion. What's the next question? What are the 2 or 3 main points the executive was trying to make? Here's some of the points that stood out to me. Strong automotive performance and record Q1 performance at GM Financial. Oops, excuse me, hit the wrong button there. Q1's been a great quarter for them. In fact, that's where that question comes from, Mr. Murphy, talking about, hey, well, why would you increase your inventory if you're getting great results in Q1 anyways? Major discussion around the semiconductor shortage. Many of you, if you're in the automotive industry, may be familiar. Renesas, I'm not sure exactly how to say it, Electronics Corporation, a key supplier of semiconductors for the automotive industry, experienced a significant fire at its Naka factory. Back up to their expectation to get back up to full production isn't until July. It's a challenge for them. So the main point is, look, we're doing this, but we've got some creative ways that we're trying to keep our production, keep the products going out the door. So they're really careful about the semiconductor. They're actually producing vehicles and they're ready to go. All they have to do is get the semiconductors and put them in. But that's huge. It's not just them talking about. So there's a lot about what they're doing, how they're trying to adapt, etc. And basically saying, look, we know what we're doing and we're in a good position as we move forward. Of course, working urgently towards achieving those key profitability milestones, return some of the ideas they talked about, return their full-size pickup production to Canada ahead of schedule, $7 billion investment in EV and AV just this year, accelerating 12 EV programs. They're bringing them forward 9 months sooner than they thought they would. New products and new technologies was a big part of kind of their key messaging. And then finally, the last thing that I kind of highlight is kind of key message. I said 2 or 3 and I got 4. I apologize. I get excited. Intend to lead on all aspects of battery development, cost reduction, and we're moving quickly on every front. Ultium battery, 60% cost reduction versus the Bolt EV battery. So basically what they're saying is, look, guys, we're going to be a key player, and let me show you all the examples as to why. Finally, what are those goals and objectives as they move forward? What's nice about this is you don't have to necessarily always just come up. Sometimes they're stated, sometimes they're unstated. But as I said before, right here, these are the same ones that I kind of captured. Everything right here is what you see on my slide. Focus on profitable growth opportunities and new revenue streams as we execute on an all-electric future. Prioritize speed to market as we launch 30 new EVs in North America and China by 2025, spending more than $7 billion just in this year alone. The total investment, I think, is about $27 billion they're looking to do. Our upcoming EV launches include, and all the ones that they're focused on, that's the future for them. Plan to share additional insights on growth strategy, including software and software as a service at the event later this year. So that's some of their highlights as they kind of went through what's going on in the business. So the last question on the tool is, what key questions and concerns were raised by analyst community? Overarching significant question about supply chain. Obviously, as they have this semiconductor reduction, that's a big deal for them. So what's going on from a supply chain in the production side? Also, what does it look like for the future of how quickly can we get where the infrastructure is built out? What is the battery's capability? How far can it go, etc. So that it really can be viable. Really, this transformation to kind of all electric vehicles, you got to almost go back to Henry Ford in the early stages of the automobile industry, right? The infrastructure of paved roadways, gasoline, getting access. All that's being developed and it's getting better and better as they continue to move forward. So a lot of questions around that. Transition to the EV program, kind of updates. They want more updates, more clarity on timelines, new products. In fact, one of the questions they asked, they want a full rollout of their plan, and Ms. Barra kind of said, hey, look, we're not going to give you that. I know you'd like that. And he said, yeah, well, we would love that. But they're only going to share what they want to share, but they ask about clarity around timelines, new products, etc. when they're going to get deployed, how they're performing around them, and then really a lot more clarity on what we should expect in Q2 and then beyond is what's communicated. Folks, that is the executive alignment tool. With this and those calls, you walk away with a rich understanding of what's going on in their company. Again, if I'm an employee, I can take that back and say, okay, so based upon what I learned, how do I impact the supply chain? What can I do to improve that? How can I make sure that we have enough cash to deploy that $27 billion by 2025? What can I do to reduce cash expense that really drives that? How do I keep our ICE vehicles, internal custom, the normal engines? How do I keep that still generating revenue to help fund the growth that we're trying to do in V? That's what this does. It brings it all into one perspective. Then you go back to your functional expertise and say, what can I do to impact it? So that's the first tool of this. Let me see if there's any questions I missed along the way. Apologize, I get stuff moving around. Charging in city driving is not the issue since most people charge at home. Excellent. I love that. And it's 500-mile batteries and charging for long distance. Absolutely. And that's where you're getting stuff like transportation of goods, right, across state lines. And you're going to have ability for vehicles that can do that. So how do you think about that? The future is still to be determined. But they're going to be at the forefront. Okay, so that's the strategy tool. Let me jump now to the financial tool. This tool is called the Navigating the Financial. For those that have been through our course, this should look somewhat familiar. Now, the thing I love about this, by the way, if you haven't been through the course, no worries. I'm going to explain it right now. Is you look at this tool, what I love about it, it brings everything that we talk in our class into kind of one place. It brings the 5 drivers, for example, along the side. The key metrics companies look at, and the key metrics I have here are the most common key metrics. But in addition, it tells you where to go to find this information in the statements. I love that. So you don't have to memorize this stuff. Now, if there's any sort of calculations, it's going to give you the equation on how to calculate stuff to get to these numbers. So that's the tool. With this tool and any customer, any company you're looking at's financial statements, which they have to provide on a quarterly basis, you can quickly assess how well their strategy is aligning to their financial performance. So that's what I want to do. Let's do some of these together. I'm going to do the first 5 together. So I get it. You don't have the financial statements. I've got them on the screen as we go through this, but please participate. This will help you feel comfortable as we give you the tool a little bit later today. So as you look at this, let's start with the first one. The first metric I want to look at, is cash and cash equivalents. Just to make sure we're comfortable with it, tell me in the chat box, what financial statement do we need to go to access their General Motors cash and cash equivalent? Put in the chat box. Excellent. Balance sheet. Yeah, absolutely. Balance sheet's where I go. How do I know that? It's right here. Okay, there's no equation. There's no calculation I have to look at. So all we're going to do is go to that balance sheet. So I'm going to jump over the balance sheet. Now, if those of you have been in our program, you may remember the financials in the asset section. The assets are listed by those things that are most liquid down to least liquid. So the most liquid is going to be at the top, which is going to be that cash and cash equivalent. So in the chat box, go ahead and put it in there. How much cash does General Motors have on hand as of March 31st, 2020? Put in the chat box. How much cash did General Motors have on their balance sheet as of March 31st, 2020. There you go, right there, $21,609,000,000. And you can actually see, as of the end of Q4, it actually increased by about $1 billion, $1.5 billion. Now, for those that are from our accounting perspective, often when executives talk about their cash position, they'll add both of these. Basically, if a company has more cash than they need in the next 90 days, they can put it in short-term investments to convert to cash within a year period of time. And so sometimes they'll add those together. But we're just looking at cash and cash equivalents. So let's bring that over to my statement. There you go. I've got it. $21,609,000,000. Pretty simple. Let's do the next one. We want to look for cash from operations. The line item we're looking for is that cash from operation. What statement are we going to go to find that? Lisa, I'll come to your question here real quickly. So real quick, cash flow. Absolutely. Go to that cash flow statement. We're going to go look at that. As I jump to that cash flow statement, here's what you're going to see. Cash flow statement, this is probably the most important line. It's called their net cash provided by operating activities. Put in the chat box, how much cash did General Motors generate in Q1 of this year? Now, this is net of their operating expenses, net of their operating budget. This is the cash they have left over. How much cash did they generate? There you go, about $1.2 billion. Now, as you look at these two measures, this measure here, cash and cash equivalent, kind of goes up or down based upon strategy. So if they're getting ready to make a major acquisition, you're going to see that cash position go up. Then they make the major acquisition, you'll see it drop. So that one goes up and down. Investors don't want you just to hold on to cash. What do they want us to do with our cash? Well, they want us to get it back to them by dividends or stock buybacks, etc. Versus this one here, they want that going up year over year, every year. That's the ideal. Let's go back to Lisa's quick question. She was asking, what's the difference between cash and cash equivalents? Well, cash is just actually cash that's in checking savings account or cash that's within their system. For example, a Walmart, right? They have all these stores. They're going to have cash in their stores. So that's just the actual cash, right? Cash equivalents represent short-term investments that will convert to cash in less than 90 days. So cash and cash equivalent either is actual cash sitting around somewhere, or it's cash and somewhere being accounts, bank accounts, etc., or short-term investments that convert to cash within 90 days. Lisa, let me know if that answers your question. Let's see. Doesn't the top form say million? Yes. So this would be 1,266 million. I'm just saying 1,266,000,000. So hopefully that helps. Great question. Okay, so we got the first one. Those are easy. We just plug and play. Let's jump to the third statement, which of course is going to be the income statement. I got to get my profit measures. All of your profit measures are going to be found on your income statement. So let's get that. Total revenue, go into the income statement. Here's my income statement. How much net sales and revenue did General Motors generate in the first 3 months of the year? Put in the chat box. Just want to make sure, please come do that. Excellent. Jeff's given some examples of those short-term investments. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, so interesting enough, that we're close. That 29 billion, that's just how much they generated from their automotive. Their financing, of course, they do financing for automotives, generate another 3.4. So the total amount is right there. Now, this is often referred to as the top line. You may remember that. Now, why is it the top line? Because of where it's located. But General Motors wants to share their two main revenue lines to their investors. That's why it's broken up. So there we go, 32 billion, 474 million. Got it. Now I got to get my net income. What statement I'm going to go to? Put in the chat box. The last one I'm going to have you put in the chat box. We're about done. There we go. Go to that P&L there. Thank you, Jazz, Mike, Holly. Thank you. Excellent. Here we go. We're looking for net income. Now, interesting. There's a few net incomes. Any guess as to which one you might use? Got a net income here. Got a net income here. Or not, it's a net loss. Excuse me. Net income here or net income here. Any guesses which one we use? You guys got the right answer. Actually, no. You can use any one. The most common one in analysts are going to look at is right here, compared to the investor. This number right here is the one they're going to look at. Those that are net income attributable to stockholders, right there. That's the number they're going to use. In the end, they're going to be relatively close to each other. But in the end, that's the number I'm looking for. Now, sometimes it'll just be purely one net income number. I want to get, when you see two lines in accounting, that means it's the summation. We're done with that statement. So that's the number to use. So we pull that over here. We're going to put it in our statement. At this point, you have the two metrics to get to our net income number calculation. So here I'm going to do, I'll do it for you. Put the 3 billion, 22 million. I brought it over for you. You don't have to do that. Then I'm going to put it there, but I'm not going to do the calculation. Grab your cell phone, grab your financial calculator, whatever you got. Let's do it. Put it in there. 3 billion, 22 million divided by 32 billion, 474 million. You can either move the decimal point 2 places, or you can just times it by 100. It'll move it for you. Give me the answer. What'd you get? For every $100 they brought in revenue at General Motors, how much net income did they generate? Give me that percentage. 3 billion, 22 million divided by 32 billion, 474. Oh, look, I got at least 3 of you saying it's 9%. It's actually 9.3% is what I got. So we got at least 5 or 6 of us getting the same number. What does that tell the market? It says for every $100 General Motors brought into their company, they generate $9.30 of profitability. Of course, if they want to improve that, what were their 2 levers? Increase or decrease. What were they? You remember? Increase sales or reduce our. There you go. Absolutely. So those becomes a lever. Now imagine if you're looking at this quarter over quarter, how quickly can you see if they're getting better or they're not as good as they were before, and what caused that? Of course, with this challenge with the semiconductor, used cars are going up. Even the price they're charging it for the vehicles are going up because demand's increased. As supply chains impacts, it's what we're dealing with in the global economy, right? Inflation. As supply chains was impacted, we all knew that supply chains have been impacted, but that's going to impact what we pay for our products or services. So you'll see those changes happen. Folks, that's the tool. Now, in the end, if you want more detail about what these metrics are, that great website I told you about, or come join us, jump in and do the online course, or bring us in and we'll help your team understand these metrics. In the end, Anybody can do these calculations. It takes about 8 to 10 minutes to get through them, and you're ready to go. So there's the numbers. Now what you can do then is you can start comparing it. What I did here is I compared General Motors performance Q1 of this year versus Q1 of last year. Now the other way you could do it is you could look at Q4. So you can do what they call sequential comparisons. You'll notice their cash is up. You notice that they're a little bit down on revenue, Q1 of last year versus Q1 of this year. Then you start looking at what's happened. So relatively low here, but a huge improvement here. Basically, they had some write-downs during the COVID year that had a significant decrease in their profitability they don't have in the first quarter of this year. So some of those impacts that happen year over year, you can tell. But it's a great way to see, are they getting any improvement? So then I'd say, here's what they're saying from a strategy. Can I see that their profitability is improving? Do I see that they're generating more cash? These tools allow us to do it. So you can do it comparing quarter over quarter. You can do year over year. You can also look at comparison within industries. So here I've got Ford's Q1 comparison versus General Motors. You'll notice they're very similar. Even at cash on hand is very similar. How much revenue they're generating. One of the things you're noticing here, a little bit better return on their net income number. For every $100 they're bringing in, they're getting a little bit better over at GM. Now, what caused that? That's where you jump in. What is the website we review? Well, to get access to this material, as we said earlier, just do a Google search for General Motors Q1 earnings or General Motors Q1 report or whatever, and you can access this data. Right now, we're doing Q1 of 2021 for GM versus Q1 2021 for Ford. Let me know if that answers your question, Maria. You can also look at it from any company. Now, these are actually the numbers. For those of you that were with us last month where we did Zoom, these are actually Zoom's annual numbers. They haven't reported their Q1. It comes out June 1st. But it's fine. Obviously, they're totally different markets. But you can see where margins are different. Look at that, their net profit margin versus obviously different types of business are going to have different margins. Look at the growth that they've generated compared to where they were before. So kind of crazy numbers as you look at that. Most of that's the COVID impact. Well, folks, that's the meat of our discussion, and that's all about how to do the analysis. So where do we go from here? We've got to apply this. Application is key. As I said, we work with many of the Fortune 500. In fact, work with 30 of the Fortune 50, providing business and financial acumen. Our goal is help to build their credibility, to build their confidence, and build their career as well as their company. These are the types of results we get, and the reason we get that is because we focus on application. You got to get application to get to impact. This was a study that one of our customers did where they focused on what's the impact of the programs that we do. Improving the performance of your business and function, 84% said they got that. Increased collaboration, improve upward communication, improve employee engagement, increase business focus, and improve teamwork. In order to get that, you've got to do application, and that's why the last step is vitally important. So right here, apply. Here's what you need to do. Once you get to the end, it's to take what are your insights and what are you going to do about it. I went through and captured mine. The fact that GM is all in the investment, I knew they were there. I didn't know how much they were putting. Significant impact. Exciting technologies are coming out for all of us. We've known about this, haven't we? Since the Prius came out years ago. It's coming. But to see that it's actually coming to fruition is pretty exciting. Of course, how COVID and the supply chain has been impacted. That was huge, how that one supplier had such an impact on the industry. Of course, environmental, social, and government is having a huge impact on all industries, and for sure this industry. And then this is a little bit of my geekiness. Anybody seen the movies Minority Report or iRobot? How close are we to those? We're not that far away, guys. Pretty interesting. We start to see that. Well, once I've kind of captured my insights, the next step is what am I going to do about it? Here's what it is. I want to analyze this transition and see how it's impacting all the different industries because it's going to have an impact. Then I want to share that. I'm a consultant. I want to share that my findings with my consultants, my clients, as well as new customers, and then listen to their calls, see what happens next quarter. That's what I'm going to do. Once you've done this, you've got a good plan. The last thing, and probably one of the more important things, is this right here. You got to schedule a review. If this is a company that your company, sit down with your manager. Make sure that you're aligned, your focus area with what the company's trying to do. Make sure you get that good alignment, and then take that information and execute. If you're analyzing a customer or partner, think about how you can be that trusted partner. How can you articulate their business challenge and the potential solutions? If you're analyzing competitor benchmark, what can you do? In the end, the goal is to have a conversation with your manager, with your teams. How can we have an impact within our industry, within our company, and with our customers? Folks, that is the tool. The whole goal is to get improvement, to do something with it. So my challenge to you is to actually do that. Now, what happens is once you get to the end of that tool, that becomes your step 2 in our prepare phase, right? Now, all of a sudden, the tool that you just created becomes something you can review every quarter. So with that in mind, here is my challenge to you. My question, put in the chat box, who are you going to analyze? If you say, hey, this is interesting, I'm not going to do anything, then I've wasted your time. Who are you going to analyze? It may be a company you work for, sell to, compete against, or partner with. I've also put AstraZeneca. You might say, why is he putting AstraZeneca? That is who we're going to talk to next, speak to next quarter. So I want to give you the website. Here it is, acumenlearning.com. Here's where you can access. We're going to hold AstraZeneca call. Highly recommend using the tool. Listen, come back, come prepared. You can ask more questions. It's on June 23rd. You can access a workbook through this website, as well as that discount to access our self-paced online program. In addition to that, if you think this is helpful, we can do this for your company. We can do it for your team. We can introduce you to other programs we have. Please let us know that, and we'll reach out to you. With that being said, I know we're right up to our time. Thank you much for your time. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any additional question, myself and my team will stay on and answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Ginger, if you happen to have that link handy, will you just put that in there? Will you share this tools you demonstrate? Absolutely. So what we got is this acumenlearning.com. You can access the tool. So that will be there, Nancy. Go to acumenlearning.com/webinar, and there you go. We've got it in there. Acumen Learning. Just click on that. And you'll be able to access. You can sign up for the next program. You can access the workbook as well as access that coupon if you want to get a refresher or a deeper dive. Thank you, Nancy. Any other questions we can address or talk about? Thank you, Maria. Appreciate you joining us. Folks, bring your friends. This is a great way. This helps everybody in your company. Imagine if every employee had listened to your call, and then with their functional expertise, decide what they're going to do the next quarter, how that could change the game. If you're in sales, if you're listening to your customers, and then you're able to articulate the business challenge and how your product or service, how that builds your role as a trusted partner. These are, like I said earlier, a hidden gem that can build your credibility, your career, and your company. Well, our numbers are getting small. Let's see. Is there any difference between quarterly and end of year one? Absolutely, Jeffrey. So quarterly, of course, is going to happen, and they provide a document called a 10Q if you want the full summary of stuff. But the difference is on Q4 and year end all come together. So they're going to talk a little bit about Q4, but most of it's going to be a summary of the whole year. The same information, how you access it's the same. You're looking for a transcript from the call. You're looking for if they have a slide deck. You're looking for the webcast itself. The difference is it's just going to have the full year information. And if you're looking for the annual financial data, it's called a 10K. So 10K is for annual, 10Q. Other than that, all the information is the same. And what's nice about an annual, you get the full year perspective, but it also gives you a little bit more full year forecasting as well. Let me know if that answers your question, Jeffrey. Great question. Anybody still on the line from FedEx? I know at times we get people from FedEx, but I was excited to see and have any additional data on these EV600s that are coming out. That's pretty interesting. How many have seen the commercial of Domino's Pizza where they've got a self-driving vehicle and you walk out, grab your pizza? It just makes me wonder how long before that's going to happen. Well, folks, it's about 3 minutes after the hour. I know we kind of lock ourselves into an hour, and I always need to end a few minutes early, and I always seem to end right at the time, so I apologize. But happy to stay on if there's any additional questions. If not, we'll be shutting down here in just a little bit. But if you haven't accessed, again, the webinar link is in there. Go to acumenlearning.com/webinar. You can access the sign up for the next call. You can also access the tool to help you use if you want to come back and do AstraZeneca with us or use it with your customer, your own companies. as well as that coupon to be able to access $100 off on our online program. Okay, folks. It has truly been a pleasure to spend some time with you today. So thank you so much. Let me see, was there any other questions on there? On my side, I have no questions, but I just thank you for your excellent presentation. Oh, thank you, Miller. Very helpful. Here's how you can thank me, Miller. Go and use this stuff. Go apply it. Actually take the tool, do something with it. That's where we really see the movement in the org. And then share with others, you know. We'd love to help in any ways. Obviously, reach out if we can be helpful. Okay. Well, again, folks, thank you so much for your time. Again, we're with Acumen Learning. We provide business and financial acumen. If there's anything we can help, go to our website. We've got great sales directors willing to reach out and share how we can approach this for you individually, for a team, or for your whole organization. Thank you much for your time and have a great day. Ginger, let's go ahead and shut her down.